Welcome to the It's About Time podcast. I'm Reed Davis, Chief Learning Officer at One-on-One Sales Academy. We put theory into practice to help more of those who would benefit from senior living make a confident, even heroic life change. Thanks for joining us today. Let's get started. I'm here today with Dave PERMUTER, Senior Living Consultant, and we're going to talk about prospect-centered selling.
Thanks for having me. It's a real honor.
Hey, listen,
to do this.
Thanks for being here. It's incredible to have you. I feel like knowing you through the documentary, having seen both versions of it, having listened to David Smith talk about you for years now, I feel like I know you a little bit as well.
I appreciate it.
Even though we've never met prior to a couple of days ago. So I really appreciate your time and coming in here and talking with me as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You have a long storied history with David Smith. Take me back to when you guys met.
Forever. And forever's a long time.
That is quite a while.
Yeah, we met in second grade, actually, Daniel Boone Elementary School. And it was on the playground, and I was running around like any 7-year-old kid. And Dave was had this more maturity about him, a little different than the rest of us. Matter of fact, I remember this. And it's something I'll always remember, and this was a few years ago. He came right up to my face in the playground and started glaring at me. He was analyzing me, trying to figure out who I am. You know, he was always very analytical, and it was a little intimidating, actually. But after that, we got to know each other and played handball together later, a few years later. And his dad was just a tremendous mentor to not just Dave and his brother and his sister, but the likes of myself and many other people. Great history. Went through elementary school, went through junior high, high school, and beyond, and kind of weren't connected too much right after high school, but then got back together years later.
So tell me a little bit about your background. You've been in senior living for a while now, but how did you get into senior living, and what did you do prior to being in senior living?
I did a number of things. I had a glass business when I was younger, when I was 28 years old, and that lasted about 5 years and failed miserably. After that, I didn't have a dime to my name, and I got my real estate license and went to work in real estate and did okay, did pretty good. Did that for about 15 years, I guess. And then I ran into Dave. I'm trying to recollect exactly what happened. He invited me over to his house for cocktails, and we hadn't seen each other in a while, and went over there, had cocktails, and he threw out this idea, hey, you know what, I'd like to have you, I'd like to have you at River's Edge. I go, what are you talking about, Dave? And he said, well, I'm a consultant now for senior living, and we're going to do a fill-up campaign there, and would you like to try it? And I went, no. Would I be on a schedule? Oh, yeah, of course. Well, no. You know, I'm in real estate and I make my own hours. He said, well, you know, think about it. And I said, okay, but the answer is no. I did give it some thought. The answer was still no, several times. And then he offered me a wheelbarrow full of money to try it for 3 months. I said, Dave, it'll be like stealing. I just can't do it. He says, well, try it out for 3 months. I don't care. I said, I'll give it a whirl. And I started off at the Gatesworth for, I guess, a month or two. And then he sent me over to River's Edge, which was the fill-up campaign. A month later, he said, how you doing? I said, it's horrible, but I'll stick it out for the next 2 months. Stuck it out next 2 months. You know, long story short, at the end of 3 months, I was pretty much addicted to the business.
So how many years ago was that?
About a year ago.
Yeah.
It was 2002, right around there.
Okay.
In that area, around 2002.
So 3 months has lasted roughly 23 years.
Yes. Now, in order to get his money's worth, the first 90 days, and he'll attest to this, I worked 90 straight days. I didn't take a day off. And I landed myself in a hospital.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My resistance was down. I had a blood infection and went to my heart. Endocarditis, it's called, actually. But I recovered from that, got back into it.
And yet you came back.
Oh, I came back, yeah.
So in the beginning then, what, other than just the schedule and having gone from setting your own schedule as a real estate agent to now being on somebody else's schedule, why were you so resistant to senior living?
Probably a lack of confidence of trying something new, something we all go through, right?
Yeah.
I think some of that, and a lot of it is, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to meet up to the expectations. And they were very good. Dave was very good at building confidence in my particular circumstance. And as time went on, my confidence grew, and I realized I was pretty decent at it.
Yeah. So how many times now have you worked with David over the last 23 years?
You mean how many times was I fired?
Sure, hired and fired, whichever way you'd like to look at it.
Yeah, hired about 10 times, fired about 10 times.
Okay. All right. I think in this industry, people don't typically last very long that aren't in it for the right reason. The flip side of that coin is that I rarely meet anybody who intentionally got into senior living. For you to have started this as a 90-day campaign that landed you in the hospital because you work so much, what has kept you in it for 23 years?
The addiction to, I always consider myself a selfish person, and the addiction to figuring out that I was actually inadvertently helping people. I think that's why I stuck with it so long. Completely different than selling a piece of property, right? Which is a big thing in somebody's life, but it's not life-changing. And I think overall that was it. I'm pretty competitive, and when I would engage with a prospect, the difficult ones were the ones that were fun for me, actually. It didn't always succeed, but those are the ones that I always enjoyed. But it was challenging my mind, my brain. It just was forcing me to think about alternative ways of attacking the situation, via what I learned from Dave combined and what I learned on my own, basically, and human nature, trying to understand people in a deeper way. And I had never done that before in anything I'd done in life, in any sales.
How was it so different from real estate?
The only time I enjoyed myself in real estate was when I went to the title company.
When the close happened?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. I can honestly say that. And I wasn't very good in following up with people after the sale and so forth. I wasn't very good at self-promotion. And in this business, I didn't have to do any self-promotion, really. You get the leads, they're provided to you, and you engage and you develop a relationship with your prospects, and you continue as long as you can with them until you close them. Completely different.
Yeah. In this industry, and I feel like particularly in senior living now, the focus in the industry revolves so much around marketing and getting new leads. Do you think that in senior living, we have a lead generation problem, or do you think we have a sales problem?
Yes. Depends on where you're working.
Okay.
I mean, it can be both, but I would say primarily a sales issue, in my view.
So why do you think then companies put so little effort, time, and attention into properly training sales teams?
I would say a lot of them come from backgrounds where they're numbers people, and the more you throw against the wall, the more will stick. I think it's that concept. And, this business is no panacea, obviously. It's a tough sale. Nobody wants to move. It's not like selling a car, is it?
Right.
So I think the biggest problem is, and they're looking for quick results too. There's a lot of pressure on the leasing agents for quick results, which, is counterintuitive for some of us because, we want to take our time. We want to go at the pace that we think that the prospect is on, and it makes it really difficult.
So when you think about that I always think about the downward pressure. So the pressure starts with the ownership or the leadership and it rolls downhill. Maybe it comes through the regional or the executive director, and then it goes to the leasing counselor. When that pressure is placed on the leasing counselor, where is the next place that it goes?
To the prospect.
And so when the prospect is pressured, in your experience, you've been part of fill-ups for the last 23 years, right? When you pressure a prospect, what is their typical reaction?
Well, they dig their heels in. invariably. And I don't blame them. I really don't. One prospect said to me, they walked in for a tour, and the first thing she said to me was, before you give me your spiel, I want to tell you something. They're waiting for the spiel.
Yeah.
Then she started asking me questions about senior living, and I changed the subject completely, as if I didn't care, and I started talking to her about her and myself, that kind of thing. I think she was shocked.
Why do you think she came in and said, give me your spiel?
Because that's what they're used to in a sales industry. Doesn't matter what you're buying, you're going to get a spiel, right? I just got one today from the heating and cooling company, or 3 of them actually.
Yeah.
You get the spiel, and that's just the way sales works. And it helps. I mean, you can do that if you're selling a product that somebody wants. Some people want to be sold, right? That's a beautiful car. I hope this guy can sell me. I'm going to dig my heels in, but I really want him to sell me,
Yeah.
Completely different industry.
Yeah. Sometimes in that resistance, I feel like doesn't come from a real place. The resistance comes from a place of, if I resist, they'll give me a better deal. If I play hardball, my dad one time went in to buy a car, and he goes, I'm going to go in there and make them sharpen their pencil, talking about getting a deal. But when prospects resist senior living, what do you think they're really resisting? Moving,
change. Totally. They come in with their kids many times, right? They're adult children. And their adult children, there's a lot of fear. One lady came in I don't know where I was. Could have been one of 50 different places. And she comes in, and we're chatting a little bit, and the kids are with her. And I'm looking, all of a sudden I look over at her, and she's terrified. I mean, I could just see it. And I said to her, for God's sakes, you're terrified, aren't you? She burst out crying, just like that. But it got easier after that for some reason.
Why do you think that was?
She knew I could read her, that I understood what she was thinking. And I try to break the ice any way I can. And for that particular person, it was effective.
Do you think that you, by saying that, gave her permission to feel that emotion?
It's a good point, Reed. Yes.
Yeah. I think that, so when we think about kind of typical sales behavior, why do you think salespeople are scared to acknowledge those real fears that prospects have?
They have their own fears. Am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to offend them? If I say, is this going to provoke them? They take that to the table. We all take our own life experience. I can't tell you how many times I'd be sitting with a partner in a community and a home visit or a tour, and I'll say something to the prospect, and I'll look at my coworkers, and all of a sudden, this is what I see. And then afterwards, they'll say, I can't believe you asked her that. If someone asked me that, I would have thrown them out of my house. And, those are the fears that leasing agents have.
Yeah. Have you ever been thrown out of somebody's house?
Oh, yeah.
Have you?
One house, 7 times.
Really? What kept you going back?
I didn't go back. I didn't leave.
Oh, they tried to throw you out 7 times and you wouldn't leave?
I was talking to the wife in the kitchen. I was talking to the husband in the kitchen, and the wife was in the living room, and she heard us talking, and every 10 minutes she said, get him out of here. True story.
Why didn't you leave?
They were interested in what I had to say. I could tell. They didn't want me there. It was unpleasant. There was a curiosity that they had that they still wanted they wanted to hear what I had to say. And by the way, they never moved.
Oh, they didn't?
Oh, God, no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you look at the statistics, statistically speaking, most of the people aren't moving. The biggest competition is the home.
Always.
Yeah. We talked with a lot of residents this week, and I don't think I met a single one that had lived in their home for any less than 35 years.
Sure.
And so that's a real fear, I think, to be able to leave that familiarity.
They think they're leaving something that they have that they don't. They're leaving something that they did have 20 years ago, and they don't want to let go. It's like they say, I'm questioning, do I really want to leave this life that I love, that I've had so long? But really, in reality, it's not the same life.
Yeah, so when you look at that, what we typically see, and I'm sure it's been your experience as well, they reach out because something logically isn't working in their situation. but emotionally, they're not sure whether or not it's motivating enough to make them change.
That's true. It's a matter of creating value or helping them create value, really. Not you creating value, but helping them create value over time.
Yeah. And
sometimes you can do it quickly, so other times it's a marathon.
how do you differentiate when it's going to be quick and when it's going to take a long time?
If they come in on a gurney, it's going to be quick.
That's generally a pretty good sign.
In other words, if they've had a serious event, which doesn't always do it either, they still dig their heels in, but many times the quick ones like that. Other times it's personality. If you're working with a prospect that's a social butterfly or has been in the past but isn't any longer, which I consider the ideal prospect, by the way, a social person.
Mm-hmm.
If you're dealing with somebody like that, it could be quicker than others.
When I was talking to David Smith about you, he said, I consider Dave PERMUTER to be Houdini. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said he has this just magical ability to get people unstuck. So if you were to say, I have a magic power, what do you think your magic power in sales would be?
I don't. It's nothing magical. We use the word too often. Empathy. I can read people pretty good. By the way, I have trouble reading myself.
Yeah.
But I can read people, and it's a matter of understanding what they're going through and them knowing that you understand. I can't tell you how many times we get to a point where the prospect says to me, so what should I do? I mean, you're at a great point when they do that, right?
Yeah.
And then you got to resist and say, what do you think you ought to do? You really have to do that.
Why do you think salespeople are so conditioned to fix rather than to understand?
They think it's the logical thing. It's not logical to the prospect. It's logical to them. So the key, is to make it logical for them. Help them come to that conclusion. Many times it is logical.
Yeah.
But big deal. If we know it's logical, big deal.
Yeah, what's it matter to us?
Right.
Yeah, it's not about us or our opinion or our agenda or our quotas.
Right.
It's about helping them come to that realization.
The leasing agent, in his heart of hearts, has to come to the conclusion in her mind at some point in time that this really is what that person should do. You don't always do that. You have to be honest with yourself with that, because it's not for everybody. Correct?
Yeah.
Senior living is not for everybody. So you have to, that's a motivator. When you come to a conclusion, and you have to hold yourself back once you come to that conclusion many times, when you come to the conclusion that this person really should move, it's a motivator.
So if you were to give a salesperson advice on self-restraint, because I feel like what you've said is you have to have some self-restraint in order to not fix, some self-restraint in order to ask another question rather than give them solution. How would you coach, or what piece of advice would you give to another salesperson that has trouble with that self-restraint?
I heard this from a person in the industry 20-something years ago, very astute person. Stop leasing apartments. Start helping people.
So when you say that, then are you talking about letting go of the result?
Totally let go of the result. Be curious. Find out who this person is. Ask a lot of open-ended questions. Don't judge. Tell them a story about yourself, a very personal one. You talk about a way of disarming. You got somebody that's colder than you can imagine. Tell them a story about yourself, something you've been through. It's incredibly effective.
Are you saying then by you letting your guard down or you expressing vulnerability that it then almost unlocks this kind of emotion with them to say, you know what, if they did that, so can I?
The first thing they do is they start giving you advice.
Mm.
And that's great. At that point, it's the beginning of a relationship. You're becoming friends.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do. And by the way, to be a friend, you got to be tough too with them sometimes. You got to be honest and tough. You don't want them just to like you, but if they get mad at you, if you provoke them, I say evoke usually, but sometimes it's provoking, right? They go home. You want them to know that you're concerned about them and you're just being honest with them.
I love that you said evoke, because I think that When we think about working with prospects, so often we're trying to put something in them, which to me would be provoke, right? We're trying to push them. We're trying to put something into them. But I feel like by saying evoke, are you saying that we need to draw something out of them?
Yeah, correct. We need to, and we want them to hear themselves over and over and over. The more they hear themselves, they know how that sooner or later they're going to realize I'm being. Sometimes they'll start laughing at themselves. I can't believe I said that. That kind of thing. That is stupid, isn't it, Dave? You want them to hear themselves.
Yeah.
Without judging. Let them judge themselves.
I don't know if you ever watched the show Ted Lasso.
I've been threatening to watch it. Never did.
Yeah. Well, there's a quote that he stole in there, but he said, "Be curious, not judgmental."
Be curious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I have one factor that helps me is I'm a curious person, almost to the point where I'm nosy, but I prefer the word curious. Curious in order to help them, because the more information you have about them, the more you can more strategies you can use, the more you can help them.
I was thinking about you in the documentary, and one part particularly stood out to me is that you were on the phone with a prospect and you were sitting in the leasing office and you were just about as relaxed as you can be. And I think you said something to the effect of, like, are you in the procrastination club? Because I'm a member too.
So she's a wonderful lady. Yeah. And I had been working with her for 2 years.
Okay.
She signed at one time and then she backed out in the last minute.
Yeah.
And as you heard on it, if I recall correctly, I know you're talking about, it was all the things that she had, that she was attached to, that had meaning behind them, all from the past, right? So how do you move somebody from thinking about the past and moving forward? That's hard when you get old, I guess, because it's even getting hard for me to let go of the past and move forward, So, yeah, interesting person.
So in your experience then, having done this for so long and having helped, I would assume, probably countless people let go of the past, how do you go about that process? Because I think that's something that salespeople hear all the time. It's either, I don't know what to do with my stuff. And the typical fix is, well, we have a downsizer. Well, you know what? So does everybody else.
That's true, but that is one obstacle, huge obstacle, believe it or not, is how would I get from point A to point B is incredibly powerful. If you're lucky, it may be the only obstacle. It's not often, but it can be. One question I ask often is, you're telling me how bad it is. Let me ask you a question. What are the odds that things are going to get better for you?
And what does that question do for the prospect?
It gets them thinking. Let's see, I'm 85 years old. I've been through this, been through that. Isn't it just a matter of time that there's going to be another event? The next event might keep me from moving anywhere. And it's just, I would think it'd be thought-provoking. And they'll sit and think, and usually they'll say, probably not. Sometimes they're in denial. Oh, yeah, when I heal from this, I'm going to, But generally speaking, they'll tell you that probably not. And then I'll ask them, so do you think, and I don't know, Claudia, I don't know, but do you think there's at least a remote chance that if you change your environment, things could get better? Is it even possible? And they go, yeah. They usually say, yes, it is possible in a different environment.
So when we think about prospects moving through these stages of readiness, and you've mentioned too, sometimes they'll move forward and either they put down a deposit and then they kind of move backward through that process. It seems like most prospects are dealing with some kind of ambivalence, right? Whether it's whether or not to move, whether it's where to move, whether it's when to move.
No question.
If you're giving advice to salespeople, would you recommend leaning into resistance or leaning away from resistance?
In other words, helping them establish what the resistance is.
Yeah.
And just attack it head on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, sure. Boy, I understand, Claudia. Tell me, describe to me what you're talking about, how you feel. I would definitely lean into that.
Why do you think salespeople oftentimes don't bring up objections?
I think they're working on an implied consent.
What do you mean by that?
That I'll just keep being positive about this, and move forward and we'll advance them and eventually they'll move. It can happen that way. When you attack it in that way, I can picture one situation where that actually worked. I kept saying no, 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 and I kept sending a partner of mine out to the house. I know they said no, tell them you understand, but do this over, get this paper signed. It has nothing to do with a lease or anything. Just get their doctor's name, write it down, one thing after another. And actually in that particular instance, it led to a lease. But generally speaking, that doesn't happen like that. You really have to hit it head on. What are your objections? And you have to understand, boy, I bet I would feel the same way. I bet I would. I bet I do.
A classic case of empathy, right?
I would imagine.
Is kind of putting yourself in that person's shoes.
Reed, a lot of the leasing agents are of younger generations, and they got so much energy, and they're so smart, and they're so sharp. But the one thing, if anything is missing from them, is empathy. How could they possibly understand what that senior's going through? I mean, that's tough.
Yeah.
By the way, I'd still rather be young and have that problem.
Yeah.
But that's got to be really tough. And many times I've had prospects tell me after they've met with somebody younger, this person doesn't understand what I'm going through, and they're talented. Yeah. These kids are talented. And as they grow, the empathy will develop too,
I think empathy is a difficult thing. I can speak for myself. I wouldn't say that I'm naturally an empathetic person. It really takes a lot of energy for me, and I have to be incredibly intentional to be empathetic. I'm very friendly and I'm very nice, but I think sometimes I'm your typical salesperson where I get caught up in moving quickly, and I don't think to myself to slow down and try to look at it from their perspective.
We're all guilty of that. I've been there too, many times. Maybe I've sped up too quick and so forth. And again, it's the pressure to lease and so forth. And not that, but it's ego. Mm. I really want this to happen, not just for them, but for me too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We all have those egos, for sure.
Yeah.
If you don't forget about it, you're in the wrong business.
Well, you talk about ego, and it's like, I would say, I'll be the first one to tell you that I have an ego. And my ego comes from a place of, I hate to fail more than I like to win. Now, I've failed, and I try to learn from those failures. But what drives me to be successful is that I hate to lose.
Sure.
More than I like to win. I also like to help other people win more than I like to win myself.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great quality.
So when you think about that from a leasing perspective, and thinking about it from the perspective of you being an older leasing counselor, and seeing a lot of younger people come into this industry, because I can say, so I've been in the industry about 23 years now as well. And one of the trends that I've noticed over the last probably year is that, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but it seems like the industry is getting younger and younger, which I think is a really good thing, right? We have another generation of people who are inspired to help older adults.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a wonderful thing. But if you had to give a piece of advice to a younger salesperson that's just coming into this industry in their mid-20s, that's having a hard time connecting with an 80-year-old or an 85-year-old, what would that piece of information be?
Connect with them the best you can and listen to your elders, and maybe hook onto one when you do a tour or a home visit. Go with an old man or an old lady. When I say that, I mean anybody in their 50s, 60s, 70s, right?
Yeah.
I think that'd be good for them. I think they learn from that. But often they do learn from it. Often they say, how do you do that? I can't do that. They understand that they're in a different situation because of their age. But I would say just learn from others.
If I said be interested, not interesting, what do you think that would do for a salesperson?
Be curious about that person and show them that you care, that you want to get to know them, and so forth. It goes a long way. That's the relationship building that you have to do.
And it takes time to be able to do that, right?
It takes time to be able to do that. Sometimes it's quicker. Other times, that trust thing again, it takes some time.
I think it's a matter of also having a little bit of self-perspective as well. And I think from a sales perspective, when I look at, my skills as a salesperson, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a very good closer. I think what has helped me throughout my career is that I'm a really good opener. I love connection because I love to understand the stories.
How do you define closing?
Oh, that's a good question. I like to look at closing in a smaller sense of the term. So I think in this industry, we've always thought about closing as getting the sale.
Correct.
It's getting the check. To me, I think that if we focus more on small closes, so if I was able to get the home visit, if I was able to talk to mom and dad because I've been talking to the daughter for a month, to me, that's a close. That's
Absolutely.
A huge advantage.
So we all learned eventually getting a check is the easy part.
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes getting them to move in after you get the check is the hardest part.
That is so true.
Yeah.
I'll give him the check and then he'll leave me alone for a while.
Yeah, that Dave guy's going to leave me. If I just he'll shut up if I just give him a check, right?
Many times.
Yeah.
For sure.
But that doesn't ever happen.
That said, you are a good closer.
Yeah. Well, but I wouldn't say that I don't consider myself a natural closer. And I've often said, people reach out to me and say, hey, we're having a really hard time closing. Can you come in and help? And I'll tell them, listen, rarely do I ever find a company that has a closing problem. Normally it's a problem with connection and building trust is where we really have the issue.
So convincing ownerships and alike what a closing really is, because all they look at is how quick did you get the check from them, right?
Yeah.
Many times. So if they can place value on those small closes that you're talking about, and I totally agree with you, getting somebody's permission to send a note to the doctor, just in case you move 6 months from now or a year from now, getting that home visit, have them come in and tour, of course. Those little things, that's what leads up to the sale, right?
So speaking of those little things, one of the staples of prospect-centered selling is creative follow-up. If you think back, do you have a favorite creative follow-up that either you've done for somebody or that you've seen one of your team members do for somebody?
Well, it's not flowers.
Oh, it's not. Oh, do tell.
Believe it or not, it is food.
Okay.
People love food, but my favorite, probably most effective, or when it's effective, is writing a handwritten letter. Not a typed letter, a handwritten letter, a page or two. It takes time, and hitting important points in that letter. Because if nothing else, they're looking at, this guy took the time to write he didn't even type it, a handwritten letter, not a form letter, that kind of thing. That's probably my favorite. I wrote a letter to somebody in Oklahoma City, and a year later, they walked in the front door with that letter, and they told me it was attached to their refrigerator for a year, and they came in for a tour. So I think that can be impactful.
Why do you think handwritten letters to that generation are so impactful?
Well, again, they're used to getting form letters. How many times do you get a form letter?
Just rip it up, throw it right in the trash.
Oh, advertising. I mean, this is something that's on stationery. It's highly personal. Somebody sat down. They can picture you sitting down and writing this letter. Many times I'll start off by saying, I've been thinking about you. I've been thinking about you, and I just got some thoughts I just have to get off my, I'd like to talk to you about and want you to hear. And it's just highly personal.
Yeah, I think it shows you took the time to care.
I hope so.
Yeah. As we wrap up, if you could kind of summarize, what do you think has made you the most effective salesperson in senior living over the last 23 years? Clearly, you've had a lot of success. You've been hired to come in and consult. You've been hired to come in and either fill or refill communities. And normally when that happens, it's not because everything was rainbows and sunshine prior. It's because there's a tough situation. What do you think has caused you to have that level of success over 23 years?
Well, I try to show up at work every day. Not everybody does that anymore.
Yeah.
And if I'm not doing something impactful sometime during that day, I'm very, very disappointed in myself. Even if 7 hours, 6 hours goes by and nothing, if something hits and it's impactful, then I feel really good about what I did during the day. And I'm also available. I can't work like I used to, but I still work, but I'm available at night, on weekends, anytime. And I get excited if a prospect calls me or responds to something on a weekend or an evening, and that's something that's kind of missing, I think, from the work ethic sometimes. But I think mainly being available.
Well, Dave, listen, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and coming and talking with me. It has truly been an honor. I've seen you in the documentaries. I've heard so much about you from David. And so it was wonderful to be able to sit down and have a conversation with you today.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Reed.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening to the It's About Time podcast and for being a Sales Academy member. To find out about our next live learning opportunity, check the newsletter, or you can email me at reed@oneonone.com.